All right, now we're going to walk through the installation of an agent on OpenText Server Backup, previously known as Carbonite Server Backup or EVault Backup, and we have agent version 9.4. The portal has already been set up, and this is the same procedure if it's going to be an on-premise portal versus one hosted with OpenText Server Backup, portal.evault.com, etc. So the installation package is already here, which can be obtained through the customer service portal. And we're just going to kick that off here. We're logged in as an administrator. If you weren't, I suggest right-clicking on it and selecting Run as Administrator. We're going to select our English for default language there. And then it goes through a couple items to get ready for the install. And the wizard is pretty straightforward here, so we're going to select Next. And then you can review that as needed, accept the terms, and I'm going to go through a custom install here, just so that we can see all the various options that are available to you. If you were to do the typical install, it's not going to have by default any of the plugins that we'll see here in a minute. We're going to use our local system account. If needed for any auditing purposes, you could use a custom account for logging what the agent is interacting with, etc. 99.9% of the time, though, you're going to want to use the local system account. You can also change the installation location if for some reason one drive is maybe running out of space and you're not able to expand it, etc. You can select for a non-typical C drive location, but we're just going to stick with the default for this. And these are the plugins that I was referencing at the beginning there. There's various options that you have here for the agent, and one of the common ones that you'll see is the backup agent as well as the image plugin. And just a quick note on the image plugin, it will need a restart after the agent is done installing if you were to select that image plugin. Now this is my domain controller, and I don't even need anything special for the domain controller in regards to any of the Exchange, SQL, etc. And if you did have some of those additional roles on your domain controller or whatever other server, make sure to select these particular plugins as needed for your setup. And we're going to use the default encryption method here. The agent will apply the algorithm that's built in. And this is where we have our portal. So for this lab instance here, we have a fictional company called company.com. And the default port there is 8086, which we're going to stick with that one. And that is the port that is only between the agent and the portal. If you're familiar with the software at this point already a little bit, there's also vaults where the data gets sent to. And this is outside of the communication of the agent to the vault. So that's going to be a different port to get to the vault, and for the agent to the portal that we're working with here to get that registration started is 8086. One thing that they don't show on this screen is there's a secondary port, and it could be to this URL or one of the AMP proxies of the portal, and that is going to be on 8087. But to get this initial registration happening, we just want 8086. And this is going to be a user that I have previously set up. And then if you have the agent auto configuration, then we could enter in a particular password for that. That is outside the scope of the initial just getting started with the agent. And we're just going to select no for that because we have not configured that for the site. And then we'll just hit install to go. And now that it's all wrapped up, we haven't had any issues. If you were to have had a problem registering to the portal, it would have brought you back to the portal registration page where you would put in the credentials. There is a view log button there also. But for this, we'll just hit finish and jump over to the portal. And here we've got that same ytportal-company.com, and I'll log in with my user. And it drops me directly into the main dashboard page, where it does have in the new section, I have a new computer, my DC1. That's my domain controller that I just installed the agent onto. And we can hide that so we don't see it. Maybe we want to have that just sitting ready for a little bit, or we can configure now. Now we don't have any add profiles though, any vault profiles, so we can't go through and configure that for us. We're just going to hit close on this and go to the computer page. And from here, you can see this is our first agent that we've set up for this particular site. And you can click anywhere along this bar or this arrow over here, and it will drop down to show you the information about this particular agent. Now, what you might see on the left side here is an automatic configuration option. And for this particular setup, we don't have that configured in our portal. This is a very basic site that we have set up here. And so the only option is configure manually. At that point, when I click on the configure manually button, on the right side here, we have add vault and re-register. If this server was replacing a previous one, whether it be a DR or maybe just an upgraded server or something like that, we could use the re-register button. And then inside here, you could put in the vault information, load the computers, etc. I'll leave that to a different video though for how we would re-register something. For this particular one, because this is a brand new server being added to our portal, new backups, etc., I'm going to hit add vault. And in here, we don't have any vault profiles though, but we do have where we can enter in the vault name. So I'll just go through and enter all this here. And now if we did want to have a change of host name as it's registered onto the vault, that is possible, something we could do. So if we know that maybe this is going to be part of a clustered system later or anything along those lines, then when the agent is registered to the vault, it doesn't have to have that same name. One thing to note real quick on that is the name that's registered with the vault is permanent. And so if you have YT DC1 ASTF, and then later on you say, oh, I didn't want to have that there, but I've already done 6 months worth of backups, I want to change that name on the vault. Well, it's there, it's done. We can't undo that. And so that would either take a new registration onto the vault or maybe some in-depth work with the support team or professional services team, but this is solid. That's how it's going to be there. And here's that other port number that I was talking about, 2546. And that is for the direct communication from that particular agent to the vault. For my case, excuse me, oh, I put that in wrong. I'm glad I talked that through. It's not DC1, it is vault-A. There we go. And that's my vault. So the DC1 server is going to communicate to Vault A on port 2546. And then you can adjust as needed for any of these reconnect or retries, and you can come in later and make those adjustments also. So I'll hit save on this, and that will reach out to the vault and complete that registration. And when you've got a successful registration to the vault, it kicks you back to the Vault Settings tab, and will show you all of that information here. If it was an unsuccessful registration, it would have brought an error up on the previous screen, and there'd be a little bit of troubleshooting to take place to see if maybe there was a firewall port that wasn't open, or maybe your credential was not entered correctly. Now here on the Jobs tab, we have on the right side, Select Job Task dropdown. So I'm going to click on that one, and we're going to do a local system job here. And that's just going to be the local drives on this particular server. Now, earlier we were looking at some of the plugins that were available for this server. And just kind of over some naming convention over the years, I found that I like to name it BMR Regular. And that's just a personal preference of mine, so that on a very quick glance, I know if this is going to be a regular, traditional, etc. BMR job, or if it's going to be an image job. If I was using the image plugin, I would come in here and I would just name it BMR image. Now the two options here for bare metal restore, I'm going to go ahead and click that one, and you can see it automatically drops down and says the C drive is required and this particular boot volume. And that is because the Windows system has told the agent that those are required in order for a successful bare metal restore to happen. Now I'm going to hit include on that. Now what we don't see in this particular server is any of those additional volumes that could be there or could be there in the future. So one thing that I want to point out while we're taking a look at this whole thing is the entire server option. That one also check marks bare metal restore and that C drive and the boot volume. Now, if I were to add in the future a D drive, Z drive, whatever it may be, this makes the agent intelligent enough to say, oh, I see that there's a new hard drive that's been installed here, not flash drive, a new hard drive on the Z drive. I'm going to automatically include that into my backup, and you don't have to come in here at all to update the backup job to include that Z drive. One thing that is of note in regards to that is that if for some reason you did want to exclude something, or maybe it's a whole bunch of ISO files that you didn't mean to have included, and you have the entire server selected, well, it's going to do that backup unless you come in and exclude those ISO files. So it could cause potential backup bloat as different drives are added. Maybe there was some testing. Maybe a junior admin didn't realize that the backup included it this way, and now your vault's full because you just didn't know that you were. Anyway, a whole bunch of stuff that could happen with that. But I would say 90% plus, this is a good option to have and should always be checked for the entire server. That is future-proofing you in a way that somebody from accounting comes up to you later on and is like, hey, look, I need this file. We added this E drive and then that failed. Guess what? You've already got it, so good to go. I'll go ahead and add my password here, and then you can put in a password hint as needed for your particular password. And in the advanced backup options, that just has information about open write files, the archive bit, and log file information. If you're having trouble with particular items, you can come in here and say, I want a file level detail, which will point out what's happening with every file. We usually keep that on a summary level, because if you did anything with like file level logging, etc., then that is going to cause a lot of log bloat and a lot of disk space unnecessarily used. And that's it for the basic setup here. We do have the enable threat detection on the right side there, but I'm going to leave that for another video. This is a very basic setup for a new agent install. So I'll hit create job here. Now the next window to pop up is the scheduling for this particular backup. I will do an in-depth video on scheduling and retentions. That's a little bit in-depth, but the basics of it here to get kicked off is that I'm going to click the button on the top right to add another scheduled line here. And the reason with it, or for it, we want to have the monthly or longest retention on top. And again, I'll get into detail into the weeds of this in another video, but for getting your agent set up kind of in a quick process here with me, that's how it needs to be with the monthly on top. And so you just click on where it says the 7 p.m. with the days of the week, click on that one, and then the drop down here, days of the month. And I'm just going to do this on the first of the month, and 7 p.m., that's great. Now the short version of this, we're going to do the same thing on this 11 p.m., except we're going to set it to 7. And that may seem a little bit odd, setting them both at the exact same time with one and the days of the week. Again, we'll get into the other video for the in-depth on that, just because it is a little bit of some nuances with that. But this will get you set up correctly with monthly on top and daily right under that. That'll set you up for success. Now down lower, we have the retry failed backups. And I am going to have that selected, and I'm just going to set that to say 10 minutes between each retry, and let's retry for 6 times. And so that just tells me that if the agent is having troubles connecting to the vault, well, this is going to retry for the next hour to try to make a connection to the vault and get a good backup in. So if it happens to be that the vault was only temporarily offline or the maintenance ended while this was in this retry period, I don't have to come in and do anything for the agent to get that successful backup and that successful restore point of that time. And so I'll hit save on there. And now that we've got our brand new backup set up, we have our last backup status of never run, and the portal here will show unconfigured temporarily until we either refresh the page or backup happens and there's more information here. So that's what I'm going to actually do to show you what you're going to see here, because you may create this backup in the middle of the day and say, oh, I don't want to have this backup run until tonight when users aren't on the server, etc. So I'll refresh the page by clicking the computers link, and you see, uh-oh, okay with warnings. Well, that's okay, because what this is saying is there's no backup that's happened yet. And so it's warning you saying, hey, wait a minute, the server is not protected. And we like to see that because that tells us, something's not being protected. And that's a good thing to see because we want to address that. And so now that we have this particular status, let's go ahead and resolve that. I'm going to go to under the action, select action dropdown, and we have the option of run job. So we'll kick off that backup with the run job, and it defaults us to the daily retention scheme. Now, being that this is towards the beginning of the month for this particular one, and maybe I want to hang on to this one for longer, even though it's not the first. I'll hit the drop down here and I'll select monthly. We want to keep the quick file scanning, even if it's the first backup. The agent's going to recognize that, yes, it does have to scan through all the files, get all the details for it, and quick file scanning basically isn't going to be used for the first one. But it could be a 10th backup, a 100th backup, and we want quick file scanning for that. And let's kick off the backup. And there we go. That's what we'd like to see. It's currently processing through file data processed and the current file size, pushing all the information to the vault. This tells me definitively that the backup is working. It is moving that data to the vault. And then when we get to the end screen, we'll be able to see the status of this once it's completed. This is going to run for a minute though, so we're going to do a little jump in time to when it's done. And just like that, you can see we have our backup is completed. It has information such as files and folders processed, the amount of data processed, etc. I'll hit close on this. And then the backup you can see here shows us completed. The other one with the OK with warnings. So I'll go ahead and click on computers again here to refresh this page. And we can see we have an OK status. I'll click on that to expand it down, showing the completed status. So there we go. That is the agent installation with job configuration and all that fun stuff all the way through to a good backup. And so this will run on its schedule, and so we'll be good to go for doing some restores in the future as needed. And we will catch you in another video.